Hi all, Satyam here, and this is the second video in our Typescript series. So in this video we are going to see how to install VS Code, which is the text editor that we are going to use to write all of our TypeScript code, and how to install TypeScript compiler itself that we are going to use to run our TypeScript code. Okay, so let's get started. Now we are going to start by installing the VS Code or Visual Studio Code, and on the computer screen you can see that I have Visual Studio Code website open. Here I can see the download for Mac OS button, but you will also see download for Windows button if you are on Windows or on Linux. So I'll just download for Mac and it should start now. So the download is now starting, as you can see here and here also, and it is downloaded. So I'm just gonna go here on my downloads folder. Okay, now on Mac, okay, this simply downloads. Okay, you don't really need to install anything, because if you just double click on this Visual Studio Code, it will actually run everything on its own. Okay, it will start. I just need to open it, and you can see that our text editor or code editor is start, and we are ready to just go for it. Okay, we can write our code now, okay, if we want to. But on Windows you will actually see an installer wizard. Okay, you just have to click next, next, next and next, and accept all the terms and conditions, and that will install your Visual Studio Code on your Windows also. So here right now I can see this Visual Studio Code in my downloads folder. That is not what I want. I want it to be in my applications folder, and it is specific to Mac actually. So I'll just drag it to the application folder, and I can see it in the application folder now here. Okay, and yeah, so our Visual Studio Code is now installed. I can see it here, Visual Studio Code, and now we are going to start with installing TypeScript. So here is the TypeScript documentation website. Okay, if I just click it here, it is a TypeScript documentation website. If you click on downloads, you will go to the page where you can see how to download and install TypeScript on your local machine. Now there are two ways to install TypeScript on your machine. Okay, one way is a simple way in which you simply install TypeScript compiler on your machine globally, and you just write TypeScript code, run it, and that's all. And another way is to use TypeScript with a project. Okay, so suppose you are trying to use TypeScript with Next.js, React, Remix, Astro, or any other kind of framework to create your project, then there is a little bit more steps involved in the installation. But the best part is that you don't really have to install TypeScript for those things anymore, because those frameworks deal with all the TypeScript installation themselves. Okay, so I'll tell you what is extra in that. Okay, so usually in the simpler version you don't really need to deal with TypeScript .config file, but when you are dealing with projects you will have to deal with TypeScript.config file, and in that config file a lot of settings are there. Okay, it's like a JSON object, a lot of settings are there, and you configure that file according to your needs. But that is not the scope of this video, so I'm not going to touch on that config file. But later on, because config file is a pretty big subject on its own, so it will require its own video. So later on you will see a video on this file. So right now I'm just gonna start installing the TypeScript on its own for our purposes. Now understand that we are trying to learn the core, the basics or the core of the TypeScript. Okay, so that you will be able to write and understand TypeScript no matter what kind of project you are on, be it Next.js, be it Remix, be it Astro, or be it any other kind of project. You should be able to run and understand and write TypeScript code easily, and that's what we are going to do in this series. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and on this page you can see here globally installing TypeScript. Okay, so this is the command that you're going to use to install TypeScript on your machine globally. Okay, and here as you can see that we are going to use npm or node package manager. It means that you will have to install node.js also on your machine. So here is the website for node.js. Okay, nodejs.org. You go to this website, you download the node.js LTS version, that is long-term support version, and you install it on your machine, be it Mac, Windows, or Linux. You just install it there, and that's it. Okay, I already have a node in my machine already set up, so I'm not going to download and install it again. But you just have to click on the download, it will download, then you just click on next, next, and next in the installer wizard, and that should download everything just fine. Now at this point our Visual Studio Code and our Node.js is now installed. So first of all, let's just check if these things are correctly installed or not. For Visual Studio Code, you can simply run it. right? You can simply run it and see if it is actually launching and running or not. In my case, everything is fine, it's just fine. Okay, simple. Now in order to check if Node.js is installed correctly, you go to your terminal on Mac. Okay, if you're on Mac, just simply use terminal. If you're on Windows, you can use cmd or command prompt, or you can use PowerShell. Okay, you can use PowerShell. These both things are there. You can just simply run or just search for this in your Windows machine and simply use it. On Linux, you can also use terminal. Okay, there is a terminal there also. Since I'm on Mac, I'm gonna use terminal. I'm opening the terminal and I'll just increase the size so that you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start checking if our Node.js is installed correctly or not. So in order to check if Node is installed or not, what you have to do is type node, then -v or -v, whatever your preference is, and enter. As long as you can see a version, everything is fine. Okay, you may be watching this video in the future, so the version might be higher. Okay, so as long as you can see a version, everything is just fine, don't worry about it. Now since we are going to use npm command to install the TypeScript, we also have to check if our node package manager or npm is installed correctly or not, along with Node.js. Node.js will install npm also. Okay, so npm-v, same command, and enter. As long as you can see a version, your npm is installed correctly. So since our node and npm is installed correctly, we can go ahead in the next step and start installing TypeScript. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just copy this TypeScript installation command, go here, paste it, and let's understand a little bit of this command. Okay, so on this command here, so we are using npm or node package manager, and we are installing a package called TypeScript. Okay, TypeScript is a package, you can say, or a lot of tools combined into a few files. That's what we are installing. Okay, and the -g is for global. Okay, it's a flag that tells the npm that, okay, look, you should install this TypeScript globally so that we can use TypeScript anywhere on our machine. We can create a folder and then a file anywhere on our machine, any place, and then we can use TypeScript there. So that's how this function, so that's how this command actually works, not function. And yeah, now in case you are facing any errors, okay, anywhere, then on Windows you should start your command prompt or PowerShell as an administrator, because you may require admin privileges to install something globally on your machine. And on the Mac or Linux, you can use sudo keyword, right? Sudo. So I'm gonna do that and I'll just press enter now. I'm gonna enter my password for my Mac machine and I'll press enter. You cannot see the password because that's how terminal works. And yeah, now added one package means our TypeScript package is now installed globally on our machine. So that's the installation of TypeScript that we are going to deal with, okay, in our series. We are not going to touch the typescript.config file because it really deserves its own video, to be honest. And mostly the frameworks that you are going to use, like Next.js and Remix and Astro, they are on anyways going to deal with all that on their own. Okay, so you don't really have to worry about it right now. So since our TypeScript now installed, let's just go ahead and run a program. Okay, so I'm just gonna minimize it and let's go to our folders. Okay, the file explorer. I'm just gonna go to documents and I'm just gonna create a new folder. You can name it anything. I'll just name it TypeScript YouTube, if I could type it correctly. And yeah, in this folder I'm just gonna create another folder for separation or for just managing things a little better. So installation video. Okay, sorry. Yeah, installation video. And now in this folder we are going to create our TypeScript file and run it. So I'm just gonna start my Visual Studio Code. Okay, and we are going to open this folder in our Visual Studio Code, because Visual Studio Code is where we are gonna write all of our TypeScript code, right? I will open this folder in the Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping. I will allow and I will trust the authors, okay, because we are the authors anyways. So Yeah, here you can see the installation video name, the name of the folder, and with this icon, the plus file icon, you can create a new file here. And I'm gonna create any file, index.ts. Now .ts means .typescript, okay, and that is how you tell whether this file is a TypeScript file or a JavaScript file or a text file, just simple text file. Since we are creating a TypeScript file, so I'm gonna use .ts. Now let's just create a very simple program like const message of type string equals hello world, if I could type it correctly. So hello world, right? It's gonna be a very simple hello world program, and I'm just gonna console log it, console log message. This is our TypeScript program, okay, very simple valid TypeScript program. I'll just save it, okay. And now how to run this code, right? Well, understand that TypeScript is a development tool. It means only programmers are gonna use it to develop code. Nowhere, okay, nowhere in this world the TypeScript is actually run on in production, okay. So what happens is that you use TypeScript to create a safe code, a manageable, maintainable, and extendable code, okay, very good code. And then what you do is you compile that TypeScript code into JavaScript code, okay, and then that JavaScript code is what you actually run on all your production servers everywhere, okay. Now how do we compile this TypeScript code to JavaScript code then, okay? And for that, again, let's go back to our TypeScript documentation, because documentation will provide you pretty much everything. And here you can see we have this command called tsc. tsc means TypeScript compiler. So we are going to use TypeScript compiler that we just installed using the npm TypeScript command, okay. And we are going to use this TypeScript compiler to compile our TypeScript code into JavaScript code. So let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna open a terminal in Visual Studio, and here I'm just gonna write tsc and index.ts. So now our index.ts file will be compiled into a JavaScript file, okay. So I'll just press enter, and you can see here we have a index.js file now, okay. Now index.js is completely JavaScript file, and this is exactly what you are going to run on all your production servers, which means now we can run this JavaScript file using Node. So I'm gonna write Node, and let me just make it a little bigger, okay. Node, then index.js, right, and it should work. So as you can see that we have our hello world printed in our console, which means our TypeScript program or JavaScript program is working just fine. But you can see that our TypeScript file is red colored, which means there is some kind of error, right? And as you can see that there is an error called cannot redeclare block scoped variable message, okay. Now there are reasons for this kind of error, but as you can see that even if we have the error, we were able to compile a TypeScript code into JavaScript code, okay. And that's how it works, okay. Because TypeScript says that, okay, the programmer knows better than me. So if the programmer says that there is an error and I still want to compile it into JavaScript, the TypeScript will just compile it, okay, because it gives you complete freedom. So this is how the TypeScript is. TypeScript is just a dev tool or development tool that will help you write safer, better, more manageable, more maintainable code, okay. And yeah, this is our first program in TypeScript, the hello world program. So now in the next section we are going to see what types are in TypeScript. We are going to see strings, numbers, and many more things. So till then, bye.